This week on the Ascend podcast, we are joined by Lanny Barnes, Olympic athlete, trick shooter, and all around baddie. She's going to share some awesome stories of survival in the backcountry and give you some tips on how you can avoid them.
Welcome to the Ascend podcast, a podcast by and for women in the outdoors. Every episode delivers real stories, practical how-tos, and a welcoming community to help you start, sharpen, or rediscover your passion for the outdoors. Authentic women, real stories, outdoor adventures, Ascend. Presented by Ducks Unlimited, the leader in wetlands conservation. Your next adventure starts here, the Ascend podcast.
Welcome to the Ascend podcast by Ducks Unlimited. I'm Adrian, and today we're going to talk about how you can stay safe when hiking and hunting in the backcountry. Today I am joined by Lanny Barnes, affectionately called Lanny Oakley, for very good reason. We'll get into that. But let me just tell y'all, Lanny is a straight up beast. She is a 3-time Olympic biathlon competitor, and in 2010, she actually clocked one of the fastest times in U.S. women's history, which is insanely impressive. She and her twin sister are also firearms instructors and basically try to help military, law enforcement, hunters learn how to shoot effectively and efficiently in high-stress situations, which I definitely need to work on that. When your heart's going, things can go a little haywire. So she's also, again, Lanny Oakley, an incredibly impressive trick shooter with any type of firearm and a public speaker. And actually, she's also a super impressive artist. So mainly, Lanny, I just need you to tell me that there's something you can't do. Like, tell me you can't sing or something.
There are a lot of things I can't do. Singing is one of them, and I'm a horrible dancer. I'm just going to admit that up front. So, we'll leave it at that.
So you don't dance and shoot at the same time?
Not yet, anyways, but we'll see. You never know.
That may be next. Well, Lanny, Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you agreed to be here. Looking forward to this conversation for sure.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you today. This is going to be fun.
I know. Well, Lanny and I have not actually met in person before, but I've been following her on Instagram for several years now, and Lanny has always been very gracious with her time to answer the many, many questions that I have had for her through the years. So I know this is going to be a great conversation. We have a few mutual friends as well, and everybody always has great things to say. So I knew whenever we were going to plan this podcast that Lanny would be an amazing resource for this topic. We're probably going to have you back on for other things because there's just so many things we could cover. So be ready for me to hit you back up.
Let's do it.
That's right. And guys, as you're listening on your podcast platform or watching on YouTube, make sure that you like this episode. And if you have any questions that we don't cover, comment, and we'll make sure that we do our best to reach out and find those answers. And then just let us know what you think, what experiences you've had as well. Main thing is we want this to be a huge Ascend community, and the more that you involve yourself, the bigger we grow. So, Lanny, before we get into our topic, just tell everybody a little bit about you, about how you got here, what drives you. Just let us know who you are.
Well, I'm one of those people, I just don't like to sit still. So if I start moving around, it's just because I can't sit still very well. But I grew up in the amazing town of Durango, Colorado, with 2 sisters, a twin and an older sister, and had a very outdoorsy family. Hunting was our biggest passion growing up, and we did a lot of sports and things like that. But found a sport that was as close to hunting in the Olympics as you could get, which is biathlon. It originated as a form of hunting on skis. And so we tried that sport out and fell in love with it. And 3 Olympics later, we dove into action shooting sports. And I think majority of that was to try to get more time for hunting, but unfortunately the shooting shooting sports kind of ended up taking away more time for hunting than we wanted. But hunting has always been our biggest passion.
And now, just for those who may not know, you reference "we" often, and that I'm assuming you're talking about your sister.
Correct. Yeah, that's my better half, my twin sister, and yeah, she we competed in the Olympics together, and pretty much done almost everything together since.
Which I think you're the first Olympian I've ever met. I know you're the only Olympian so far on the podcast that I've had, so this is pretty cool. I'm having a chat with an Olympian. I'm pretty impressed.
Well, we bleed just the same as everybody else, and I'm sure we'll get into that. Have some interesting stories for you guys, but yeah, it's I've been following you as well, and it's great to talk to you today.
Absolutely. So let's get into our topic because I know this year it seems like there's been a few more incidents than I've heard of before with injuries and stuff happening in the backcountry. I know you also just had a really amazing trip to Alaska. So certain there's some backcountry action there. Tell us, paint a picture of that trip and what that looked like for you.
So I spent 18 days in the very, very, very remote wilderness in northern Alaska, above the Arctic Circle, with my dad and two other folks, floating on a float trip down a river. We were flown in. We had to put our rafts together, pump them up, and then hit the river. It was one of those kind of trips where you can't just pull over and stop at a Walgreens if you need something. So I put a lot of thought into what I needed for that trip based off of past experiences and, also what other people recommended. And, I think being prepared, like you said, there's been a lot of incidences and situations this year where people have encountered some challenges in the woods and you just never know what's going to happen. So it's good to be prepared.
What would you say? Okay, first, what are the biggest dangers that in general for a backcountry hunt? We'll get into more Alaska specific, but in a backcountry hunt or hike, what are the biggest dangers that you were aware of?
Well, I think the things that people encounter the most are probably weather and terrain. A lot of people aren't necessarily prepared for weather that might roll in. I grew up hunting in the Rockies, and it could start out in the morning 60, 70 degrees, and then within minutes it could be snowing and sleeting, and you could encounter some potential hypothermia in a heartbeat. So being prepared for all different kinds of weather is really important. And then as far as terrain, people have a tendency to take big falls and things like that. Just you're not. Most people, I imagine, are not hunting necessarily on a trail. So ground and things like that are unstable can really be a hindrance to hunters.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's not like, you fall down and sprain an ankle and, the park ranger who's just down at the station can come grab you on the cart, you know, just right up the
Yeah,
trail. So,
absolutely.
unfortunately, I'm sure in a perfect scenario, the beauty of the area, as long as everything is going tremendously well, absolutely trumps any concerns, but you have to be aware and prepared as best you can be for those sorts of incidents.
Hmm. Absolutely.
What, so let's talk about the weather situation. What is your best advice for like for how to prepare for weather as best you can?
Well, I think there's a few things that you always need to have in your pack. I mean, I take a little day pack regardless of when and where I'm hunting. Even if it's duck hunting, I'll have a little pack on my back, and I'll tell you why here in a second. But having just a few emergency supplies on hand can be the difference between life and death. And I think a lot of times, if especially experienced hunters like ourselves, we tend to get complacent, and so we take for granted, the weather and just things like that, and that's when we get into trouble. And me personally, I've had a lot of scenarios and situations where I got complacent and I got lucky because it worked out, but it could have gone either way. So some of the things that I always carry with me, doesn't matter
Mm.
summer, winter, spring, fall, is I actually have a lot of stuff here. So I have a
Oh, perfect.
Ziploc bag. Okay, it keeps it waterproof. I always carry a
Mm.
pair of extra socks, wool socks, gloves, and a knit hat too. Um,
Mm.
you know, Hypothermia is a really big danger in the woods, and being able to get those things warmed up in a hurry can really help. Those are the things that get wet easily: our hands, our feet, our head. If we can get those warmed up, then it helps our core stay warmer.
And do you know off the top of your head, hypothermia wise, how quickly, like how much time in general do people have in a really big change in weather?
It totally depends on the situation. I mean, it could happen within a matter of minutes. It depends on the person's level of fitness, how exposed they've been, how depleted their system is. If you've
Mm.
been hiking and hunting all day long, and your blood sugar's low, and you're close to what we call bonking, your
Mhm. Yeah,
body
yeah.
can't keep itself warm and you can't produce heat, then the effects of hypothermia can kick in a lot quicker. So, and there's different stages of hypothermia. If you're shivering and all of a sudden you stop, that's a very bad sign. Um, and there's in a lot of situations they'll find people in the woods completely naked because when you go
Mm.
through hypothermia, one of the final stages is your body feels like it's really hot. So, and people start getting delirious and things like that. So they start taking their clothes off, thinking that they're overheating, when in fact they're not. It happens a lot on Everest and things like that too. So, yeah,
Another thing, which we'll probably get it more into this, but I know often when you're hot, when it is hot and you're sweating, your brain automatically understands like, "Hey, I need to drink more, I'm sweating." But I feel like often in colder environments or especially out west where it's so dry, here in the South, it's humid all the time. We kinda understand, like, "Oh, I'm
yeah,
thirsty because it's humid." But when it's so dry, I think sometimes you don't register that you're still dehydrating yourself.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in the West, especially, dehydration is a big thing. I mean, just being at altitude, which most places out west, they start at 5,000 and then go up
Right.
to about 14. So, you're especially if you're from low altitude, dehydration is a big issue. And then also electrolytes. You're burning more calories, and your sodium potassium pumps in your muscles are working a lot harder than they do at low altitude, just because it's harder on your body at altitude. So, a lot of people don't drink enough water at altitude. They start getting headaches. Headaches is the first clue, really. Well, actually, dry mouth and feeling thirsty is the first clue. But if you get to the point where you're thirsty or hungry, you're already dehydrated and you're already depleted. So what I always tell people is, don't ever get to the point where you start feeling thirsty or start feeling depleted. Like, keep your blood sugar constant so you're not getting these spikes and drops, and then always continue to drink little bits throughout the day, just continuous drinking of water and electrolytes and things like that.
That makes great sense because, like you were saying, if you already are thirsty or hungry and then some event, whether it's an injury or the weather, something changes, then that just magnifies your chances of things not going extremely well for you.
Yep, absolutely.
So other than the socks, the gloves, and the hat, just in case, what are some other things that absolutely 100% you are gonna have in your pack?
I'm gonna have emergency blanket. That's going to be something you can wrap around yourself, kind of make a little tent or something like that. If you need to get warm in a hurry, a poncho, a little thin rain poncho, for those storms that just roll in unexpectedly. I also carry they have these down jackets that are, super packable, and I carry things like that. Uh, just for an emergency so I can throw on something, put it under the poncho if I need to, just for a little bit of extra warmth. Staying for me, because I've had so much frostbite exposure through my Olympic sport, staying warm in the backcountry is a big challenge for me because I get cold really easily. Where other people have that circulation in their fingers and toes, I don't have it because I've had so much nerve damage. So I have to think about that, because I could get myself in a pickle a lot quicker than most people. So some other
Now,
things too
yeah, go
that
ahead.
I
Sorry.
always keep in my pack is a lighter. Always making sure that you have something to start a fire with. There's the little fire starter logs, and then the little rope and things like that, that can help you. I I err on the side of carrying too much as opposed to not enough, just because I've been in situations where I thought, "Oh, well, I'm just going out for a quick afternoon hunt," and then I got myself in a bad situation. So, it's just one of those things. The more you prepare, the better it's going to be. So you think about the kind of the basics that you need: food, water, shelter, warmth. Those things. If you just think about those things, those are going to help keep you safe and help determine what you need to bring with you.
In terms of the hunt that you guys did, what did that look like with the food and the shelter and all that? What did that look like?
We were lucky because on the rafts that we were floating on, we could actually bring quite a bit of equipment, surprisingly. So we had tents, and our tents also had stoves in them, which was nice for drying our clothes out at night because it rains up there all the time. It actually rained 18 inches before we flew out
Oh,
and
wow.
flooded everything. But and it also helped keep us warm. If you don't have that option, being able to find a place where you can start a fire, bringing a tarp with you. Tarps are really incredibly handy. I always carry a small tarp with me, um, regardless of what I'm doing, just because you can use the tarp to put meat on. If it's raining like crazy, you can make a little shelter. There's so many uses that you can use for a little mini tarp. So I always have one in my pack as well.
I hadn't thought about we haven't done, I would say, very little backcountry hunting. Most of any hunting we've done has been even like little day trips where, you go out for the day, but then you get back in the truck and drive back to the house sort of thing. So this is very helpful for me because I wouldn't, I mean, I think I would have think like, oh, I need, some Band-Aids and some blister kit, that kind of thing. But those kind of major things like the tarp and that sort of stuff, I probably wouldn't have really considered as something you should for sure have with you every time.
Yeah. Well, let me give you an example for and this applies to all the duck hunters, duck and waterfowlers hunters that are watching. So I was um I don't know, it's probably early teens, 13, 14, 15, something like that, and my dad had taken my twin sister and I duck hunting along this river. And we were sitting in a blind, and my twin sister and I, with some ducks, flew over, and we both shot a few ducks. And I was young, inexperienced with that kind of thing, and we only had one dog, and she was going out to get my sister's duck, but my duck was floating downstream. So I wanted to keep an eye on it, so I started running downstream along the river after it. Just following it to make sure that I could tell the dog where to go after she brought back my sister's duck. And I slipped and I fell in the river. So
Ugh.
Number one rule, I did what my dad told me to not ever do, and I held on to my gun, which was good, so it wasn't, deep in the river and have to go back in and
Right.
get it. So I popped up with my gun, got on shore, but the tarp was a lifesaver because there's so much snow on the ground that we were able to put the tarp on top of the snow, get a bunch of dry clothes, and get me dried off and warm without having to stand in the snow to do it. And that's one example of how a tarp can be useful. A lot of people think of a tarp over you, but sometimes being able to stand on it and things like that can make a big difference as well. Having a completely dry area to be able to get yourself warmed up and things like that can help.
Yeah, because like even if you built a fire to dry things out, you're still sitting in wet snow, which is now melted snow, so everything is still wet. So that's
Correct. Yeah.
yeah, that's a pretty ingenious. I'm gonna have to write that. I'm gonna have to put that in my pack. I have to have me one of
Yeah.
those all the time now.
Yep.
Let's real quick. I feel like you're gonna have a few more cautionary tales for us. So before we get to those, let's go ahead. Let's just take a quick little break so we can hear from our sponsors.
Introducing the next evolution of our best-selling TX platform, a groundbreaking duty-ready pistol that brings elite mission-grade performance to the modern shooter. Expertly assembled in the USA, optics ready right out of the box. Engineered for shooters who expect more from their firearm. This is the all-new Taurus TX9. Built to perform when it matters most. Designed to back you up no matter what.
Great flavor starts with the right fire. Oklahoma Joe's grills and smokers are built to deliver rich smoke, deep sear marks, and real barbecue flavor, whether you're cooking back at camp or in your own backyard. And because they're made with heavy-duty steel and durable construction, they're built to last season after season. Head to oklahomajoes.com and use code DUCKS10 for 10% off your purchase.
See the way with the Model 2020 Waypoint, premium American-made hunting rifle built to deliver the accuracy and performance you demand from a custom-grade rifle from the gun makers at Springfield Armory.
Also proudly sponsored by Bird Dog Whiskey and Cocktails. With flavors like blackberry, peach, and salted caramel, Bird Dog is the perfect way to cap off any adventure. Enjoy responsibly.
Well, welcome back. Thank you guys for sticking with us. So, Lanny, like I said before the break, I feel like you've hunted enough, especially in pretty harsh terrain and harsh conditions. Share another, like, I'm sure you have plenty, but tell us another couple of just cautionary tales of things of how how not to have these bad things happen now.
Yeah, and it was even just last year, and I made a very unfortunate mistake that could have cost me. And when we were growing up, my dad always told me a tale about one of his best friends growing up hunting. He had slipped with a knife and accidentally stabbed himself in the thigh while he was cutting up a deer, and they found him. He had just undone his belt buckle, and his belt was halfway out, and he had passed out and then bled out and didn't make it. So I always remembered that and thought about that every time I was out in the backcountry. And I usually almost always have a very, very good med kit with, chest seal, trauma dressing, a tourniquet. I bring a little bit of everything. I even have like the bleed stop. If you guys don't have this in your pack, this stuff is really helpful. I've used this on a lot of people and friends and stuff like that. It can help in an emergency. But anyway, so last year I had one day to elk hunt. I was really busy out in Nevada where I worked, and so I had one day. I flew back, landed at I think 4 a.m. Went home, grabbed my pack, which I thought was sufficient. I didn't even look in there to see if I had everything in there. And I hit the mountains. And by, I think, maybe it was 4 or 5 in the afternoon, I had a bull on the ground. I had shot an elk.
Oh,
So great day, awesome day.
Yeah, great day.
And my twin sister had shot an elk, maybe about a half a mile to a mile away. And so, knowing that she was over there by herself, um, I wanted to hurry up and get mine cut up because I was a little bit ahead of her and then go help her. So I was rushing. And as I was cutting up my elk, I even thought about it. I said, be careful, don't slip. And actually found a knife on the trail coming in, and it was sharper than mine, so I used it. And I think it'd been there for a while, so it was a little rusty. So I was cutting up this elk, and I slipped and I stabbed myself right in the thigh.
Oh, no.
And it was one of those things at that moment, I was like, okay, I was in the middle of this field. It was dark. I had my headlamp on and I was all alone. And I said, I can do one of two things. I can freak out and I can panic and it's going to be worse, or mind over matter and I can just deal with it, do what I got to do, and make the most of whatever situation that I need to handle in this moment. And I chose the latter. And so I said, all right, it's not a big deal. I did it. There's nothing I can do about it. So let's just take care of the problem. So took my pants down in the middle of the field, put my hand on the wound, and hobbled over to my backpack. And I said, don't worry, Lanny, you have the best medical kit in the world in your pack. And I got in there and all I had were snacks. So I had taken my med kit earlier on another trip. I had thrown it in another pack and went out on a shorter hunt and put it in my day pack and not my elk packing pack. So my fault for not checking, right? We get complacent. And so I looked at it and it was bleeding, but not bad. I could pinch it closed and it would stop bleeding. So I had a pair of long johns that I wasn't wearing, so I wrapped them as tight as I could around my leg. And again, I got lucky because had I needed a tourniquet, I wouldn't have had one, and I probably would have bled out right there in the mountains, and we wouldn't be sitting here right now. So just a good reminder that like anybody and everybody can get complacent and learn from other people's mistakes, and always double check your equipment. So I ended up hiking out. It wasn't fun. Later ended up getting stitches and whatnot. But had I had my med kit, it would have been just fine. But it's just another one of those situations. You always have to have something with you because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's I'm obviously another good tip of always check your bag before you leave.
Yep. The one thing I always recommend for people when they're hunting, especially in the backcountry, is a meat stapler. And it's not for game meat, it's for your meat. I also carry a suture kit because I've practiced on you can get little suture kits and practice things and actually learn how to sew up yourself or others. And I highly recommend people doing that. But if you don't have the stomach for that kind of thing, or you don't know how, or things like that, these little staplers can work really, really well. Yes, it's not going to feel good,
right?
But if you need to staple up something that's bleeding or things like that, it can work really, really well.
That's cool. And you can, I'm assuming you can just buy those Amazon sort of situation, or do you have to get them at a medical supply store?
I think mostly at medical supply stores. The suture kits I think you can get on Amazon and stuff like that. But the little stapler, and they have different sizes, and depths of staples. So I just kind of get the medium one. Thankfully, I haven't had to use it yet, but if I do, then obviously it'll come in handy.
Oh yeah,
I could have used it last year.
Yeah, and like you said, obviously it won't feel great, but it's better than the potential of bleeding out when you're
Absolutely.
alone.
Yep.
So that's another question I have for you. How often do you hunt by yourself more than you hunt with other people, or how do you feel about that?
I would say probably 50-50. Um, even when I'm hunting with other people, like when I go out with my family and my twin sister, for example, she'll go one way and I'll go the other way. And we'll know in general where each other are, but the places that we hunt don't have cell phone service.
Mm.
And luckily now with Apple, you can do the satellite texting.
Mhm.
Um, and when I was in Alaska, I had a satellite phone as well as for backup and things like that. But um, you should count on emergency services and search and rescue not getting to you for at least 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
And in that time, you have to have enough medical supplies, enough food, water, and things like that to keep you hydrated and from depleting your energy. And then also enough things to help keep you warm so that they can get to you and you don't expire by the time they get to you.
So with your well, I hadn't thought about this question, but do you find that the SOS satellite thing actually works pretty decently?
You know, um, I've never used it. I've had family members that have used it. They've rolled their vehicle in the backcountry and had to use it, and it worked really well. But again, it was quite a bit of time before they were reached. And whether it's in your car or whether it's in your pack, having a really good first aid kit, a trauma kit,
Yeah.
because I mean I carry a chest seal in my pack, and you're like, well, that why would you need that? That doesn't happen that often. But if you fall and a stick punctures your lung or something like that, being able um to seal that up is really important, and things like that. So again, I err on the side of bringing more than less. Obviously, when you're in the backcountry, if you carry too much and you're not in enough shape to haul that all day, then you could still get yourself into a bad situation as well. So,
Yeah.
getting in shape and being prepared for hunts is part of the plan, or should be part of the
Yeah.
plan.
So that's another good point is you work out a ton, like, on your Instagram. I think your working out routine has maybe some to do with your hunting, but I think it's just, who you are as an athlete. But what do you recommend? Like, let's say somebody's going to not like a backcountry 3-4 day, but they're going to Colorado elk hunting for the first time. What training program would you recommend for that?
Yeah, so a lot of people think when they think of hunting, they think, well, I got to hit up the gym and things like that, and I strongly advise against going to the gym.
Okay.
And the reason being is the more muscle mass you have, the more energy and the more oxygen your body has to supply those muscles with. And at
Okay.
altitude, you have obviously a lack of oxygen and your body has to work harder. So the more muscle you have, the harder your body has to work just sitting and just being present at altitude. So think light and lean. So you don't want big, thick, heavy muscles. You want endurance and what I call strength endurance. Like people think, well, I'll go and I'll do 3 by 8 eights, three sets by 8 reps, right? And you don't, that's building thick muscle.
Mhm.
I talk to people about strength endurance, and it's how many times can you lift your leg with a 50 to 80 or even more pound pack. Let's say you're packing out an elk, which,
Yeah.
for me, the pack's at least 90 to maybe 110 pounds per pack. So, and you have to carry that for miles. How many times can you lift your leg, whether it's an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? And, people don't have time to do 3 hours, obviously, but the more endurance you can build up, with an 80 plus pound pack on, or even just hiking throughout the day with a 30-40 pound pack on. Can you do that? Can you hike all day with a 40-pound pack, shoot an elk right before dark and not have enough energy to get yourself and the elk out? If
Right.
you hire horses, you're you're golden. But for those of us that don't have that option, you got to be able to slap it on your back and then still get yourself out.
So it sounds like, not to be all physiological, but specificity of training is kind of the objective. Like, figure out what it is that you're going to need to do and just get really good at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a sheep hunt, if it's if you're doing waterfowl, tromping through the heavy deep snow, sitting there in really cold conditions. That is kind of an endurance of itself for the body, endurance
Yeah.
body and mind.
Yeah.
So just preparing yourself for difficult conditions, mentally and physically. And I think the better your endurance, people hate endurance because it's long, it's slow, it's boring. But the better your endurance, the better you're going to be not only in hunting, but in everything you do in your life.
Mm, yeah. That's a very good point. Being able to kind of mind over matter sometimes.
Yeah. Especially when you stab yourself in the leg.
especially especially when you stab yourself in the leg. So, note to self, try really hard not to stab yourself in the leg,
Correct.
even
Yeah.
though you
You
tried
you
really
can
hard
you
not
can
to.
avoid those situations by preparing ahead of time, being patient, and not rushing.
That's true, yeah, because I guess had you been gotten home a day earlier, you could have had time to check your pack and make sure everything was good and all that good stuff.
Mhm.
So let's see. What would you say, okay, how much experience do you have? We've talked about cold weather situations a lot. So let's flip that a little bit. Let's say somebody is going pronghorn hunting in, where it's gonna be super hot. What does that look like? How is that different?
Yeah, so, I think the hardest thing for people to do is carry enough water with them, and so being able to find one, map out where potential water sources are in case you get into a sticky situation, are really important. That's part of the prepping and planning ahead. Knowing if you're hunting in a new area, I mean, nobody has an excuse these days not to know. Back in the day, we didn't really have resources and things like
Mhm.
Onyx Hunt and stuff like that, where you can look up Google Maps or anything like that ahead of time. So, mapping out where potential water sources are, but knowing how much water to carry. I carry one of those Nalgene packs, big packs on my back, and fill it up, and if you don't drink that an entire day plus some, you're probably not
Mhm.
drinking enough water. And so some of the things that I always carry with me, regardless, is like even my little day pack. If I'm going just for a short amount of time, like I always have a life straw with me, because that could help in a sticky situation. You could put this in a mud puddle and it's not going to be fun, but get yourself a little bit of water. And nobody ever talks about them anymore, but the water purification tablets. Everybody carries a water filter, which I do too, but there's a lot of things on a water filter that can break,
Mm.
and if you're filtering a lot of water in the backcountry, and let's say your filter gets jammed or stops working or anything like that, having water purification tablets can be the difference between giardia and not getting
Uh,
giardia. Trust me.
yeah. Yeah.
um,
Oh, that sounds like a
yeah,
story.
yeah. Well, when we were little, um, I thought I was invincible, and going in the backcountry, we thought, okay, well, this looks like a right from the source spring, and ended up getting giardia because a coyote had done his business
Oh.
stream, and it's just you never know. It's always be cautious, and whether it's beavers or you don't know what kind of animals are or things are getting into the water. So the more you can just prepare, the better you don't have to deal with that later.
And I'm sure you've never done that again since then?
Nope. Yeah.
Unfortunately, live and learn. So, like you said at the beginning, it's important to learn from other people's mistakes as well, so you don't have to suffer yourself.
Yep.
So, we
Absolutely. Yeah.
appreciate
And
your experiences.
right. I mean, I always carry the little packs of, electrolytes. One of the biggest things for people at altitude or in like desert places, because a lot of the deserts in the West are still high altitude.
Mm.
So when you get dehydrated, electrolytes and also, lemon packets, those are really good to help you, rehydrate and things like that. The problem with a lot of people with hydration is people don't understand it. They say, "Oh, well, I'll just chug a Gatorade and I'll be fine." There's electrolytes in there and sugar and whatever, but Gatorade is probably, I hate to, if there's Gatorade lovers out there, I hate to say this, but Gator is probably one of the worst sports drinks. So is Powerade, and all those sports drinks are horrible for you because there's too much sugar, not enough of the electrolytes that you actually need. They call them the sodium potassium pumps in your muscles for a reason, not just sodium, which is in most things, but potassium. You need both in order for your muscles to function.
It sounds like what you're saying too is it's important to hydrate with water, but if you overhydrate, then you're also depleting that sodium potassium pump. So then that's when you're going to get your cramps and not, may potentially in a bad enough situation not be able to get yourself out because of that.
Yeah, it's the two extremes. If you drink too much water, your cells are gonna become diluted, and you're not gonna have enough of the electrolytes to, allow your body to function properly. If you're drinking too much of the Gatorade and, those types of things, it's gonna dehydrate you even more because it's gonna be, too much of the sugars and the
Mm.
salt and things like that and not enough water. So having a good, mixture, is gonna help and I highly recommend taking the time to research a good electrolyte and not just something that, is like the Gatorades and things like that.
Is there? I know there are a couple of newer ones out there that are, I guess, lean toward the healthier side because there's less of the bad stuff in them. Are there any that, I mean, not like an ad per se, but are there any that you're like, "Well, I really do kinda like these because they tend to be a little more healthy?"
Yeah, like, I can't remember the one that everybody's been doing now. It's like, I think it says IV or
Oh,
I
yeah,
can't remember, uh,
liquid IV, is that what it's
Liquid
called?
IV.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
they actually and, I hate to a lot of those ones that people think are healthier these days aren't necessarily because
Mm.
the kind of, minerals that they're putting in there is not, and the percentages are not necessarily what you want. So I've two places that I've kinda used over the years is there's and I don't even know if they're still in business. We had so much stuff, we just stocked up on it and it lasts forever. But, ah, now I can't even remember the name, but it's out of Salt Lake, and they use minerals from the Great Salt Lake. Um, I'll have to look it up. It was really awesome stuff. And then, Shakely made a really good, electrolyte with the right percentages of, um, electrolytes that we use while we were training for the Olympics back in the day. And so I really liked those. But again, you don't have to, like, most of those electrolyte things have things in there that you don't need, like caffeine. I mean, it's just gonna make your heart pump even more. With exercise, you're gonna get the, endorphin release, so you don't need caffeine while you're out hunting and things like that,
Yeah.
and just make you shaky when you're shooting. So, anything that has a lot of, just look for something that's really simple. That's that's
Yeah.
that's my recommendation. Another thing that I recommend is carrying, honey sticks, for quick energy. They're really lightweight. You don't need a lot to go a long ways. But if you start feeling shaky, if you start getting like your eyes get blurry and you start feeling the signs of serious fatigue and that kind of bonking feeling, then, the problem with a lot of those energy goos and gels and things like that is those things will dehydrate you quicker than anything else. Unless you have, because they're too much, like those little goo packets, people hit those and then it's just like it's almost too much sugar and things like that. So, a little honey packet like this, that's what you need.
That's
You
really
don't
cool.
need
Where do you find those?
well, actually in Durango, we have a little place called Honeyville. It's local and they call it the land of elk and honey. So I just get them from there, but you can order these honey sticks anywhere.
Okay.
Again, don't order just from China because who knows what's in there. But yeah, most local honey stores have them.
That's a good tip for sure. Because in the past, we've used goo for various training things, and like during a endurance event that's like a couple hours, it's fine because you just need that burst. But that makes sense if you're out there for hours, like days. You don't want to. And again, like you said, maybe not knowing where your next water source is or how quickly you can get to it. You don't want to do things that are going to suck the hydration out of your body even further. So that's a pretty cool tip for sure.
Yeah, and it's just those goos and gels and stuff. They give you a spike, and
Mhm.
then there's always a crash afterwards.
Yeah.
So if you're crashing already, think of how bad your next crash is going to be
Oof.
if you're depleted after a something like that. I mean, if you're back at the truck, hit one of those things if you
Yeah.
have to. No big deal.
Right.
You're there, right? But if you still have a ways to get out to the truck, you know, then don't hit those things. You
Yeah.
have to be smart about what you put in your body.
Yeah. That's really cool. That not cool, but that's a great bit of information that I think, again, you see things that you're like, okay, this energy drink or this hydration drink, this energy packet, and it's easy to, see the advertisements and be like, "Oh, that'd probably be a great idea." But then if you don't really think about how your body responds to those things, then definitely can get yourself in a pickle out there in the wilderness.
Yeah, and if people are wondering what to use, go to the store and buy multiple products and test them out in your training leading up to hunting season.
Yeah.
If you're going for hikes, see what it does to your body, because everybody's body reacts differently to different products.
Yeah. That's especially too, you never know digestive wise how your body will respond. So if you wait till you're out there and you try something and then it just totally tears up your system, then that's a whole other issue.
Yep. Yeah.
So let's go back to the the stabbing yourself in the leg sounds like a pretty bad thing. But would you say, what's the I guess what could be the scariest thing that's happened to you while hiking or hunting out in the backcountry?
I would say that ranked up there pretty high. Just because I was an inch the other way and it would have been a different story. But I'll tell you one story and then, people, I'm a little bit crazy and different when it comes to hunting. So, my twin sister and I were up elk hunting and, she was about 11,500 feet when she shot her elk. And I was a little bit lower, maybe about 10,000. And I think she called me and said, "Hey, there's still elk here. They just went around the mountain. Get your butt up here, and you might be able to track them down and shoot one." So I was with my dad at the time, and so he looked at me. He's like, "I'm just gonna sit here and eat my lunch. I'll meet you up there later." He's like, "Go." And so I started running, right? Because back when I was training for the Olympics, we could run mountain ranges, and because we were in shape for it. And so I started running, and if you've ever run at 10, 11,000 feet, it's challenging. And the elk had moved up to about 12,000 feet, and I was maybe a mile and a half to 2 miles away from them. And in my mind, I was at lower altitude, so I started really running pretty hard. And I had a pack on, and I had my gun, and so extra weight and everything. And I wasn't. I was rushing to get there because I didn't want them to leave, so I wasn't stopping to hydrate or anything. And by the time I got to where the elk were, I bonked, which is basically your body gets to the point where you can't do anything. Like it hits a wall, and I couldn't even lift my leg over logs. So
Oh my gosh.
the elk had left. So whatever. But I was not in any shape to do anything. Anyways, had I seen them, I was so
Right.
shaky. It was like, so I laid down, and that can be a very dangerous thing because my core temperature dropped quickly. Back
Oh,
when we were
right, because
training
you're
for the
hot from.
back when we were training for the Olympics, my my body fat percentage was anywhere from 8 to 10%, and so as soon as I laid down, my body temperature started to drop quickly, and I started to get hypothermic, and so luckily I had all the right stuff in my pack, but had I not,
Mm,
or had I been, and being depleted already, I didn't have that much energy left. So luckily I had enough energy to get out my emergency blanket and put on an extra coat and things like that. But had I had extra things on top of that, rain, snow, something like that, it probably would have been a different situation because I had
yeah.
pushed myself past what I was capable of doing at that altitude, capable of functioning.
So
So,
how did you get out? Like, how did?
this is actually a really funny end to the story. So I laid there probably for a couple hours, and while I was laying there, I ate something, I drank something, things like that, because I knew that if at that altitude, if I kept exerting energy, then I was done, right? So I just laid there, and I'm like, there's nothing I can do. If I don't recover, I'm not gonna be able to walk out. So I just laid there until my body recovered enough for me to at least get over to my twin sister, and then at that point we had to pack a elk out and then hike out. So, eh, but again, like my twin sister and I, we've done a lot of really crazy, not so smart things, and we've learned a lot from the lessons over the years. Um, but while I was laying there, thankfully the sun came out. Can't believe
Uh,
I'm telling you this, but so I was super sweaty too. So I'm like, okay, I started stripping my clothes off to change, and I didn't have enough energy to take my boots off, so I had my pants around my ankles, and I had my shirt off, and I was just hanging out there in my sports bra. And while I was doing that, I didn't think anybody was even back there in that area. I hear a guy behind me, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'm like,
uh,
"Huh." I'm like, "Well, just changing here." And he's like, "Seen any elk?" He just starts carrying on a conversation with me, right? And so I'm thinking, like, you see a girl in her underwear in the woods with her pants down her ankle, why wouldn't you just leave her alone? You know?
well,
Uh,
seen any elk?
right.
That's-
And so I'm just like, no, like I just want to end the conversation as quick as possible. So he just said, "Okay, well, you have a good day," and then he walked off. And I can't imagine what the campers back at camp that
Oh.
night, but you know, anyways, so
Oh,
the
I would love to hear that. I would love for that guy to be like, "Oh my gosh, that was me." Like
right,
what he was thinking when that was going on.
yeah, yeah. But anyways, again, having extra clothes to change into, um, regardless of who's watching, is really important.
That's right.
So yeah, that can help.
And I think too, one thing that I thought could be a very strong temptation, and this is kind of based on some things that have happened this year, is when your dad said, "Hey, I'm going to stay here," and you just got a couple miles to go. Like a strong temptation could easily have been to left your pack with him because
Oh yeah,
you're going toward your sister. So now
Yep.
if you make that choice, don't take your pack because you'll be faster. Now you're done.
Yep. And both my twin sister and I, we've done that before. Sneaking up because we love to hunt elk archery. That was our favorite, and so we've had situations where we've left our pack and our shoes, gotten down to our sock, and start sneaking down. And you could have a 2 to 3 hour sneak. It's not that far, but 200-300 yards to try to get in closer to get a shot on an elk with a bow. And your pack's way up there, you're dehydrated, your feet could be wet, things like that. If you don't know how to get back to your pack, like my twin sister once, she lost her pack. She couldn't find it. And so she called me and I was able to get to her, and we spent a good while looking for it, but we found it. But had she not been able to find that, she would have been at least half a day and
Yeah.
good 6-8 miles from the car without food, water, all that kind of stuff.
So again, you were talking earlier, the mapping tools that are out there now. Like, sounds like marking your spots, but also like if you take your pack off, drop a pin so you can get back to your pack, or any other spots like that for that matter.
Right. Yeah. And technology is only as good as long as it's working.
Mhm.
So, one thing like we had in Alaska is like, okay, well, we have these phones for mapping out where we're going down the river and stuff like that, but we don't have any way of charging them, and solar charging in Alaska where there's no sun is not good. So, having a backup of paper maps is not a bad idea. That's what we did. We had backup. So or having a battery pack if you're not going out for very long. Um, so just things like that to think about.
Is there anything else? We talked about a lot of really good stuff. So make sure your bag is packed with the things you need. You want to have in a preferably a waterproof manner, clean socks, dry socks, hat, gloves, so you can stay warm. Emergency blanket, ponchos, electrolytes, plenty of water purification sources, the tablets and the straw, snacks, good snacks, the honey sticks. I was trying to think of what else. Oh, the blood
Fire.
kits for sure. Yeah, fire
Yeah.
starters. We'll put together a list and put that in the description. So we'll work on
Yep.
that. We'll make sure it's in there.
Yeah, I'll get a list of a day pack for just day hiking, and then multiple day trip. Because there's
Perfect.
obviously things like that I recommend. Like I even when we were in Alaska, because we couldn't just pull over to a pharmacy, and we were, you
Yeah.
know, really, really far from anything. I mean, and it's the thing in like in Alaska, your air transport, if they can't fly in, you could be stuck there anywhere from a few days to a week before they can come and get you. The weather turns south. So things that I brought with me, antibiotics, different medications if you have cold or nasal things, a stomach issue, things like that. I brought all of that with us because you just never know.
Right. That's really smart too. Yeah. So we'll um we'll make sure that there's a list available for like that. That'd be great. And then that way you guys can just click that and have that available to you. Lanny, any other kind of last tips that's like, okay, if I don't tell you anything else, this is what you need to know?
I would say have a list, and every time before you step out the door, double check to make sure that everything is on the list, because it's easy to just grab one thing when you're hunting and then not replace it. Or something could fall out of your pack, who knows what's happening. So having a list and just being really religious about checking it every time you go out could make the difference between life and death.
That's a good point. Yeah. Excellent. Well, Lanny, thank you so much. Such great information. Awesome. Like I say, we're going to have a great resource for you guys. Today we covered a lot. which is fantastic in terms of backcountry safety, hunting, and just if you're going on a multi-day hike, these things are going to apply to that as well. Lanny, thank you so much for being an amazing guest, an amazing resource. Tell everybody where they can find you and follow along.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Super excited to be part of this amazing community. Everybody can check me out on social media at Lanny Oakley or on my website, lannyoakley.com.
And I promise you guys will not be disappointed. It's just, again, pretty much any trick shot you've ever imagined. I think the one I just saw the other day, you were hanging upside down and split a playing card with a 22.
Yeah, I like to do lots of different things and kind of think outside the box.
Yeah, so you won't be disappointed. It's great. And then tons of just great content. Very entertaining. So if you head over there, check her out. Also, while you're perusing the social media, make sure that you follow Ascend by Ducks Unlimited on all of our platforms. I've said this before, I pretty much say it every time, but the big thing is we want this Ascend community to be for everybody. We want, if you are interested in being outdoors in any type, then we want you to be part of it. So make sure you follow along. As I mentioned before, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, comment, share it with all your friends. Same thing on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. As always, we appreciate your time. This is Adrian encouraging you to follow your story wherever it takes you.
Thank you for listening to the Ascend podcast. New every week, the conservation-driven podcast 1 week and our adventure video series the next. Watch the Ascend adventure episodes on the Ducks Unlimited YouTube channel. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, follow your outdoor story wherever it leads you. Ascend.